Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fit Life Podcast. I'm your host, Jackie Labadia. It is Thursday, March the 5th, and we are officially starting to move into the spring season. Here in Ontario, we have had a really long winter this winter. It started in November. I remember our very first snowstorm was at the end of November. We had just moved into this new house, and we have not been able to enjoy kind of greener weather since we've been here. But this week we're moving into positive temperatures, actually mostly above zero. So it's been kind of a treat. And it's that sprig of hope that is finally coming around the corner, and that nicer weather is upon us, and the sunlight is shining a little bit more, and it's such a relief. And I know that my colleagues and I were talking about how we don't realize how depressed we are in winter until the sun comes out and the warmer weather starts, and then all of a sudden it literally feels like you are a spring flower blooming out of the ground. So that has been wonderful. And it has got me thinking too about the next steps and kind of what trends tend to happen in the fitness industry as we go along these seasons. And when springtime comes, that is when a lot of people end up starting to think about getting healthier. That you feel more motivated, you feel like this renewed sense of energy, and it's an easy time, or it feels like an easier time when people are like, oh, summer's around the corner and I want to feel and look my best. So this is when we tend to start thinking about that. I know New Year's is also another thing, just because I feel like that's it's almost like a more commercial type of time where we feel that obligation to make New Year's resolutions and all of those pieces. But because we're stuck in the winter season, it tends to be a lot tougher than we think it's going to be. But spring, again, with this renewed sense of energy and motivation, that's when a lot of people, are starting to look at their health and wanting to look their best and feel their best. So I wanted to come on here and talk more about that and more about fat loss specifically. I know that not everybody who is listening has specifically fat loss goals, but how can we make fat loss sustainable, and how can we make it so that it's not like a dreaded season where we're cutting out all of the foods that we love and just feeling like we're going for another round of dieting, basically. I feel like most people who have tried to diet, for example, will go to the extremes and have unrealistic expectations without even knowing it. So I'm going to go through the different pieces of what I walk my clients through and what we focus on in order to actually have a sustainable but successful fat loss rate that they can actually reasonably keep off for the long term, and how and why that is. What happens to make fat loss sustainable, and what do we need to adjust in order to feel like that, and in order to see the difference between sustainable fat loss and the quick fix fat loss that a lot of people really look for. Yeah, I feel like I know that for myself in the past, before I really learned about behavior change and learning how to diet from a sustainable perspective, it was always like, okay, what's the next thing that I need to try? And you would always think back, okay, in the past, this is what I did, and that really worked, so I'm going to hop on that again. You try that for a couple of weeks, and then it's not working the way that it used to, so you switch gears, and you're like, okay, well, maybe I need to cut out this, or I need to do this, or whatever. So thinking in terms of quick fixes, right? When we want to lose fat, we want to lose it quick. We have this expectation that you can do 30 pounds in 30 days, or what have you, and it's just not realistic, especially when we want to keep it off and we don't want to continue these cycles of dieting, feeling good for a little bit, but gaining it all back, and then dieting and all of this stuff, right? We don't want this big roller coaster of dieting and not dieting and gaining weight and losing weight, not only because from a psychological perspective it's quite daunting, but it's also very hard on our bodies too. So when we can do it from a sustainable perspective, you're not only having the benefit of keeping it off or understanding how you can keep it off, but also it's just a lot easier on your body, and you're also going to have the benefit of giving your body the benefits of these other pieces that influence your weight and the things that come with that. So a couple of episodes ago, I talked about the big rocks of fitness, the pebbles of fitness, and the sand of fitness. So essentially, like categorizing different strategies that people that you should be implementing for your health and well-being, but that there are a lot of pieces that are essentially sand to the process, like very, very minuscule benefits and outcomes that people love to really prioritize when it actually doesn't do much, versus like the big rocks that you do want to prioritize and ensure that it's really part of your foundation. So I am going to be referring to some of the big rocks and some of the pebbles of that episode. So just for a recap, the big rocks that we're going to be looking at are things like sleep, stress management, eating, like your nutritional quality, movement training, and mindset. Okay, so keep those in mind because we are going to be referring back to these as we kind of move along, and how we're going to kind of break down like what you can do in order to make your fat loss goals sustainable. And we also want to make sure that like the process in itself is realistic, because if it's not realistic and you're holding yourself to these unrealistic expectations, you're more than likely not going to be able to pursue the length of time that you actually need in order to see like a good outcome and reach the goals that you have. So first of all, when it comes to fat loss, we need to have realistic expectations. And so I'm going to go through those a little bit in terms of like what you need to keep in mind when you want to lose fat. And you're going to be disappointed with a couple of these things, but it's speaking to the realistic parts of these and what we need to know. You can't lose fat. You can't lose a whole 30 pounds of fat in 30 days. And also, side note here. When I say fat loss, I'm not just talking about weight loss. There's a big difference between fat loss and weight loss, okay? So if you're looking to lose weight, you're just looking to drop pounds on the scale, but your weight encompasses so much. It's water weight, it's fat, it could be fat mass, but it also could be muscle mass too. And when people lose a drastic amount of weight in a short period of time, say you drop 10 pounds in 2 weeks, I'm sorry to say, but that's likely mostly water weight that you're dropping. It's actually not really like fat mass that you're actually you're losing. You're losing inflammation, you're losing water, which can be helpful. It does help with like puffiness and digestion and bloating and things like that, but it might not actually be the body composition that you're looking for. And that's why so many people, even when they do lose weight, feel unsatisfied in their bodies, because they're not all of a sudden the snatched, shredded kind of body that they want. And it's because they focus too much on just weight loss and not fat loss and not losing fat mass is essentially what I was trying to say. And there is more to that piece too. And I will get into that and explain that in a little bit. The first thing that you should know when we are trying to take steps to truly lose fat mass and truly build a body composition that is healthy is that it's going to take longer than you really anticipate, as I was kind of alluding to. It is not going to take 30 days. And depending on how much you have to lose, like if you have a significant amount of fat mass to lose in order to be at a healthy weight, it's going to take a long time. It's not going to take 6 months. It might, again, depending on how much you have to lose. I'm looking at a year, maybe 2 years, depending on where you're starting from. If you have a significant amount to lose. If you are like an average person and you have, say, like 20 to 30 pounds to lose of legitimate fat mass, again, it depends, but I would be looking at upwards of a year for sure. minimum a year. Like, give yourself that, because it just gives you that grace period. It's not putting this pressure on yourself to go to the extreme to see it come off as fast as possible, but understanding that sustainability takes time, because it's not just about losing the fat mass, it's also about establishing the foundation. And those pieces take time, because these are skills and changes that you legitimately have to make and implement time after time after time after time, before we can even like refine it to a point that you're going to start seeing that progress really roll out. And I'm not saying that you're not going to see any progress until those foundations are established. Like, you will. But again, like, those take time. So until those are well underway, it's going to take time to really see the outcomes of that. You're just not going to master everything all at once. And again, if you're a true beginner and you have none of the big rocks that I named like under wraps, it's going to take time to establish all of those, right? And you're not going to master all of them in the course of a few months. Those are always going to be something that you are consistently focused on and refining according to the season of life that you're in. And again, that takes experience, and that takes guidance, maybe of a coach or something like that, in order to really understand what that can look like for you and how you can make it, optimize it to the best of your ability. So I think it's important to remember that as you go through this process, because it takes a long time, you're going to go through seasons of life where it's going to feel harder than at other times. You might start because you're more motivated, you might start because you're more energized, or maybe you're less busy or what have you. But in order to continually see progress and to continually get to a healthier body composition, you have to learn how to adapt your process and pivot, but also remind yourself that even in the times when you're not seeing the weight fall off, it's not because it's not working, it's because it takes time. It takes more time than you think. And you have to continually accept that and remind yourself, and is what makes fat loss so much more psychologically hard. But it is something that you have to remember. The next thing that I want you to remember is that there will be times that you are hungry, okay? Just because we are trying to put you in a sustainable calorie deficit, for example, and we'll get to this, which usually means that when you're on a diet, for example, if you're on a diet where you're cutting out certain food groups or what have you, you are essentially putting yourself into a calorie deficit that without knowing, like, or kind of like unintentionally putting yourself into a calorie deficit. And that's why it works. People will correlate or believe that the cause of the fat loss is because they cut out carbs and it was the carbs that was making them fat, but it's not. It's the extra calories that you were eating that was causing you to gain weight. And now that you're not eating those foods that were so calorically dense, you are now in a calorie deficit and losing that weight. So when we are, and at times there are different diets that will put you into an extreme calorie deficit and are harder to sustain. But even when you are in a sustainable calorie deficit, it is normal to still have these bouts of hunger. It doesn't mean that you're never going to be hungry, but it does mean that we have to understand that a calorie deficit is essentially controlled starvation that elicits this stimulation and these signals to your brain that we now need to use the extra energy that is stored in our fat cells. So if we're using those stored fat cells, that is what results in fat loss, in essentially is how that works. But we have to remember that, yeah, there are times where we're going to be hungry. If you're a woman, sometimes some women are more hungry during their menstrual cycle than in comparison to other parts of their monthly cycle. So they might be totally fine during ovulation and during the luteal phase and the follicular phase, but during the menstrual phase, they are like angry. So these are tidbits to really keep in mind and to bring awareness to, so that you have a better understanding of how to handle it. So for this kind of situation, if you are hangry during a calorie deficit during your menstrual cycle, for example, this is a time where it's okay to increase your calories a little bit in the name of sustainability and being consistent with yourself, but not putting yourself through this misery of trying to push through when you are genetically just more hungry during your period. There are ways to navigate this. And again, like when you're in a situation where you are navigating it on your own and you have no idea how to do that, that is where a coach can be very, very handy to give you that guidance and give you that feedback. That would be my highest recommendation, because there's going to be, especially when you're new to this, as you go through these different, there's going to be so many different scenarios that are going to influence your hunger or influence your ability to show up. And that's where having someone in your corner to really guide you and provide you with information or encouragement or accountability, or even just suggestions and ideas of how to navigate it, can really help somebody through that process. Getting back on your routine, restarting and trying over and over and over again will be the most important thing that you do. So again, because this is going to take a while, because these are things that you want to be establishing for the foreseeable future, like for the rest of your life, it is going to take time to establish. There are going to be times where you fall off the bandwagon, so to speak. But the most important thing that you ever do is keep getting back on, keep getting back up, keep trying, keep restarting, trust the process, because it is normal to fall off track. It is normal to feel misaligned with your goals at times. It happens. Life is going to happen, especially when you have lots of responsibilities and lots of various factors in your life that are going to throw you off that trail. But the more you can drive yourself back onto that trail and keep aligning yourself back onto that pathway that is essentially leading you to the outcomes that you want, the faster you're going to get there, right? So yeah, you have a weekend where you're like, fuck this. I just want to eat. I just want to veg. I need the rest. I need the mental break or what have you. But you start again the next day and you give yourself that day to just kind of do what you want to do. But the next day you get back on the horse and you realign yourself on that pathway. The important thing here is you're allowed to have that flexibility. You're allowed to enjoy things. You're like, seasons are going to come up, birthdays are going to come up, celebrations are going to come up. And we don't always want to, fat loss isn't necessarily always a, reason to miss out on these things, because you do want to live your life. But also we want to make sure that we keep ourselves in check enough to allow that a little bit of flexibility, but to know that we know how to get back into alignment with the life that we essentially want to lead, right? So the more you do this, the better you get at it. And of course, there are going to be times where it's worthwhile to say no, and that the trade-off of eating certain things or engaging in certain things are not going to be beneficial to you enough for you to be misaligned. And as you go along, you are going to learn what that looks like. You are going to start to understand when to choose those things and when not to choose those things. But that, again, it takes experience and takes awareness building and just learning from mistakes that you're going to make in order to make those choices that feel best in alignment with you. So an example might be something like Christmas season. Christmas season can get really out of hand for some people, depending on who you have in your life and like what you do for a living and things like that. But sometimes you have a big family, so there's multiple celebrations. You work in a space where there's multiple work parties, or there's always kind of Christmas food in the lunchroom kind of thing. And when you want to be cognizant of your health, that is a prime example of when you should pick and choose when you want to indulge. Is it worthwhile to have the lunchroom foods every single day of work just because they're there and just because it's Christmas? Not always. Is it worthwhile when you have that one big party with your favorite members of your family that are all going to be there, and your grandma's making her your favorite kind of pumpkin pie, and you just want to sit and enjoy yourself and be in the moment and not worry about calories for a meal? Absolutely, then that might be a good trade-off, right? So again, like, these are things that you will learn as you go along, because there's going to be decisions that you're going to regret for sure, where you do decide to indulge, even though you know that it wasn't like that important to you to indulge and to enjoy yourself, but you're like, ah, fuck it, like, it's there. But then you do it and you're like, that wasn't worth it. Like, like, it wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be, or now I feel like shit. And I also have these other things coming up that I want to enjoy myself at a little bit more, but now I've had that extra meal that I could have just said no to because I really don't feel like I missed much. So again, like, but then you take that as a learning experience and you apply it going forward. So it will take time to get that understanding and build that awareness. But yeah, like, so getting back onto in alignment, this applies to, the understanding of it's a lifestyle change. It's a learning process, and these are all skills that you are essentially developing. Somebody doesn't go to work, like, you didn't go to school for your career and learn everything overnight, right? Like, you went and got maybe a college diploma or a degree or years of apprenticeships in order to get where you are. And those are skills. Those are skills and knowledge and experience that you had to build in order to get to where you're at now. And this applies the same to changing a lifestyle and building a foundation that will navigate you to a healthier body. So keep that in mind. Like, that's what this is. It's not a plan that you just follow and it will work. It is navigating skills and awareness and understanding and learning how to pivot them towards the life that you want. For fat loss specifically, the biggest piece that is a driving factor that is going to get you to fat loss is a calorie deficit, but it's not always as simple as it sounds. So you may or may not have heard this term, when it comes to fat loss, calories in versus calories out is what matters. And although that's true, that is, like, way oversimplified. Because obviously, for one, everybody's calories are different. Everyone's genetics are different, and that influences your calories. Your metabolism is different due to varying factors, and that influences calories. But essentially, what we want to do is we want to figure out what a calorie deficit is for you right now. What kind of things are happening in your life that are influencing whether or not you can maintain a calorie deficit, and bringing awareness, again, to those things. So if you are, again, I'm kind of like alluding to true beginners, because that is, like, the toughest place to be. When you are a true beginner, you haven't changed your diet in years, you haven't been exercising, you're not really super cognizant of how much you move or how much you sleep or whatever. The calorie deficit is going to look very different for that person than to somebody who has been exercising and moving and experimenting with their with their food choices and stuff for years on end. But so we want to keep that in mind. We also want to keep in mind, like, hormonal regulation can influence a calorie deficit. Whether or not you're in menopause can influence a calorie deficit. Whether or not you are pregnant or postpartum or breastfeeding can influence a calorie deficit. There are many different factors within an individual's life that can affect what a calorie deficit is going to look like for them. At the end of the day, you can do the calculation. There's many, like, caloric deficit calculations on the internet that you can find. But essentially what you want to do is you want to find a starting point. And if you can track and weigh your food, and I don't want to say meticulously, but at some point you do have to get a little bit more meticulous about it. And that calorie deficit doesn't work for you after like 4 to 6 weeks, like, you're still not seeing any changes, then you're not in a calorie deficit and you may have to make adjustments. But again, this is where a coach can be super, super helpful in giving you that guidance, and helping you to bring awareness to these things and helping you to make these changes so that you're more on track to getting those outcomes. So the way that I think about coaching is, you know, on one hand, you can do this journey on your own. If you think of it as like a road trip, you can start from where you're starting and get to your destination eventually without a map or without GPS. And eventually you'll get there. Like you'll stop at places and you'll ask questions and you'll change direction, and then you'll stop at another place and again ask questions and change direction, and eventually you'll get to that destination. But that's going to take way longer to get to that destination, where your coach is like your GPS. Your coach is your guide that is, instead of you guessing your way to that destination, your coach is that person who is that GPS telling you how to get there. And again, you might make a few wrong turns, you might miss a step, you might mishear, you might misunderstand, but you're learning along the way. You're learning the route. You are picking up on visuals. You are finding landmarks, and you're getting to understand how to get there. That's essentially what coaching is. That's essentially what working with a coach is like, where we can't make you do what you're doing, but we can definitely guide you there and give, and when you are like ready and open and willing to receive that guidance, that is what's going to help you get to the destination that you're looking to get to. And that's why so many people struggle with this. They don't understand kind of what goes into fat loss, and I don't mean to like deter people from pursuing fat loss, but if you want sustainable fat loss, it does take a lot more skill and a lot more knowledge and experience and time in order to really achieve that. But the payoff is incredible, and it's so worthwhile, so much more worthwhile than cycling through all kinds of different diets and torturing yourself with the foods that you're eating or not eating, and being fearful of foods and not having a good relationship with it. The payoff of learning how to sustainably maintain a healthy composition is, in my head, like worth the amount of work that it does take to implement it, or to learn about it. I should say, like, once you learn it and you really have a good understanding, it's a lot easier to implement than any kind of diet out there. It just takes time to build it. It just takes time to lay down those foundations and gain that understanding. But if you have someone to help you and really give you that information, and you're willing to work with them and do what they're asking of you, then you're going to get there in no time. It's really that helpful. So the number 5 that I have written down is that the big rocks that I spoke about earlier will make a calorie deficit 100 times easier. So as I said before, if we're looking at a true beginner, you have not looked at your nutrition, you don't exercise, you don't like regulate yourself, you are literally on survival mode, you eat the most convenient foods, you are sedentary, all of these things. And I'm not here to like shame or judge this, but this is where a lot of people are at, and this is what makes the ball feel so hard to push. But if we were to go through the big rocks and look at how much easier a calorie deficit will be if once we implement this foundation, then going forward is going to be so much easier. So for one, sleep and stress management are 2 different points, but kind of drive the same outcome in the sense of self-regulation. So what I mean by self-regulation is when we have a really solid established circadian rhythm, for example, and you go to bed at the same time, you wake up at the same time, you feel like you get a good, decent night's sleep, you limit screen time right in the morning and right before bed, you get daily sun exposure. When you go to bed, you make sure that, you have blackout curtains, maybe a white noise machine, maybe you adjust the temperature to like a more optimal temperature to help you get a good night's sleep. These are all things that like sound logical, but just a lot of people do not do them. and therefore they don't sleep as well as they probably could. When you don't sleep as well as you could, your hunger, right, your hunger cues get thrown off. Hormones are less regulated. It's a lot harder. Your body is essentially like seeking energy because it didn't have that time to power up. It didn't have that time to charge as adequately as it needed to. So that's why sleep, when established and when it's good, can be so helpful, because if your hunger cues are on point and your body knows when it's hungry and knows when it's not and knows when it's full, that makes hunger, like eating regulation, much easier. You're not going to have as many cravings. You're not going to be just grabbing random bites of food here and there because you're just always hungry. Your body is going to have a much easier time regulating through a calorie deficit. And stress kind of goes into that as well, because obviously stress can affect our sleep and affect our moods and things like that. So again, like, I say stress management, not stress elimination, because that's just not possible or realistic. But when we're like actively managing our boundaries, what we say yes to, what we say no to, making sure we're home at a decent time after a party so we can get a good night's sleep, making sure that our plates aren't overfilling with all of these different pieces of life, and really trying to make sure that we have downtime and actually like have recovery and rest. That again, like, that influences so many pieces. If you're stressed out, guess what? There's actually such thing as stress eating, and your cravings can go up when you're more stressed out, and there's other elements that are going to influence your self-regulation, and when your self-regulation is thrown off, it just makes everything so much harder. Choosing nutrient-dense foods. Again, if you're a beginner and you are not eating foods that are whole foods and truest to their, like, as close to their natural form as possible, that's going to make your calorie deficit much harder. Again, there's no such thing as good or bad foods, but there are such thing as foods that are going to benefit you and foods that are not. When your diet is mostly made up of hyper palatable convenience foods, you're not only not getting the nutrients that your body needs, but in general, most of those foods are not filled with volume at all. So they're not going to like physically fill your stomach, but they're also super calorie dense for a lot of them as well. So what I mean by that is that where fruits and vegetables are lower in calories but full of volume, like you can eat, like, I don't even know how many cups of lettuce, and it's like next to nothing in calories, but it makes your body feel full. It makes your stomach feel full because it takes up so much room, versus Pop-Tart, which is probably 200 to 300 calories just in itself, and it's this little square. And once that's like chewed up and in your stomach, it really doesn't take up that much room. So you're going to be hungry in an hour, and it has no protein in it or anything like besides carbs and fats. There's a big difference, right? So although a Pop-Tart might be more convenient than making a salad, the salad is going to have more payoff. There's more like return of investment, so to speak. And you can apply that to basically anything that you get off of dry shelves versus the things that you get in the produce aisle. Now, I'm not trying to say that all processed foods are not nutrient dense. That's not true. There are different levels of processed foods, right? I'm talking about the hyper palatable, super man-made foods, granola bars, Pop-Tarts. I don't even know. Like, there's so many different things, but there are such thing as nutrient-dense processed foods, right? Frozen fruits and vegetables essentially are actually considered processed foods. Like, it went through a man-made process in order to get to that point. Obviously, fruits and vegetables do not come frozen. But they're still very good for you. Most of the time, they are flash frozen at their like most nutrient dense peak. So, frozen fruit, sorry, frozen foods are generally more affordable than fresh fruits and vegetables, depending on where you are and what season it is. So sometimes frozen fruits and vegetables might be the better option. And man, like, so to speak, I would probably if you are not eating any fruits and vegetables right now and all you can afford is canned stuff, I would start there. Better than nothing. So it's just, this is not me saying do not eat any kind of processed foods, because that's not true. What I'm talking about is the hyperpalatable man-made foods that are only made up of carbs and fats and sugar. So there's a big difference, right? So that's to say that even if the thing that you started with today was not figuring out your what a calorie deficit looks like for you, maybe today your focus is, okay, I need to start swapping out some of my foods so that I am eating more nourishing foods that my body will feel good about. That's probably, like, honestly, the very first starting point that I would give anybody who is just starting and wanting to get healthier is, you know what, let's not even worry about a calorie deficit right now, because that can be overwhelming for some people. But if you're not eating quality food right now, let's start there. Because now, sorry guys, my kids keep interrupting me today. So yeah, like, basically what I was saying was that if the first thing that you are doing is swapping your food and the different foods that you're choosing for more nutrient dense foods, that's not only going to probably, one, put you into more of a calorie deficit than what you were eating, but also you're going to feel better for it, because now you're actually nourishing your body. You're actually giving your body nutrients that it can use and really benefit from a well-being standpoint, which in turn is going to give you more energy. It's going to give you more mood stabilization. It's probably going to help you sleep better. And if you have that energy, you're going to be moving more. You're going to be doing more things. You're not going to feel sluggish. Your skin is going to be glowing. So there's so many benefits in just making that switch. And then working with that later, once you have that established later down the road, now we can kind of refine that by looking into a calorie deficit and what that can look like in using those foods. So also not just looking at fruits and vegetables, but ensuring that we're getting enough protein, ensuring we're getting enough fiber. And again, if you are switching from hyperpalatable foods to more macronutrient foods and things that are coming from animals and from plants and vegetables and things like that, then automatically you're already getting more than what you were. So that's such a simple thing that you can do, but also such an impactful thing that you can do as well. Moving your body in a calorie deficit is going to create more of a calorie deficit. So when we're in a sustainable calorie deficit, the goal here is not to eat as little as possible. The goal here is to put you into a calorie deficit, a slight calorie deficit, enough of a calorie deficit that you're going to lose anywhere from, say, 0.5 to a pound a week, which isn't a ton. But because we are only putting you in a slight calorie deficit, which is going to help with that hunger regulation, because we're not starving you. We're not trying to do anything extreme. We're just doing enough that we're chipping away at that fat mass. But when we also implement movement, now your body is going to be using more calories than what it previously was. So in doing so and doing those two in conjunction, we're putting you into more of a calorie deficit without physically cutting down the calories that you're consuming. So we're balancing that kind of energy in and energy out equation. So that's very helpful. And I'm not talking about movement in terms of your training. Your training is like intentional exercise that you're carving out throughout the week. But movement is everything you're doing outside of your training. So are you walking more? Are you parking further away? Are you taking the stairs more often? All of those things really accumulate so your body is utilizing the energy from your fat cells that you have stored so that you can create a healthier body composition. And now we're going to training. So your training part is about building muscle. It's about building and sustaining the muscle mass that you have. So when, again, in conjunction with your calorie deficit, what I had kind of mentioned before was that the difference between fat loss and weight loss is that weight loss is just focused on your weight, whereas fat loss is focused on the body composition. You're focusing on eliminating too much fat mass on your body that it will be would make will cause more stress to your body, and preserving the muscle mass that you have, which is really, really, really crucial and important for independence and longevity and overall well-being. So when we are training and eliciting that stimulation for your muscles, and in conjunction making sure that we're getting enough protein in our diet because we are switching to more nutrient dense foods, that is what is going to help us to lose strictly fat mass and minimize the amount of muscle that we're going to lose. So not only now are you getting your body to a healthier body composition by reducing the fat mass and increasing or maintaining your muscle mass, but now you are also protecting your longevity and your strength and your bone density, and making sure that you are not losing weight at the cost of your well-being. So see how all these pieces kind of like come together into the bigger puzzle piece. And then the last thing is mindset. Mindset is, I always say it's a work in progress, because the psychological challenges of this are going to be there. It can be daunting, it can be rewarding, but it's also very eye-opening. It's also a learning curve. You're not just learning these skills and learning how to pivot your lifestyle and make sure that you're showing up for yourself, but you're also making adjustments to your perspectives on all of these pieces. You're bringing awareness to your own behaviors. You're growing as a person. It's giving you a sense of direction and a sense of self-development and personal improvement and well-being, right? So the mindset piece, although can be very challenging, and it might even make you face some things that you have been suppressing or haven't been able to face in other situations. It might bring up some personal things. It might bring up like past experiences with body image. It might bring up your relationship with food. But these are all things that are worthwhile addressing so that you can grow and improve on yourself and build a better relationship with yourself and the people around you too. So again, the big rocks and establishing the big rocks of health and fitness are not only going to make a calorie deficit 100 times easier, but these are the pieces that are always going to be prioritized in order to adapt your routine and in order to continue to grow. But also, they're always going to be your foundation of health. They're always going to be your foundation of well-being. So my next part is, why does all of this make fat loss more sustainable? So because we are focused on these 6 big rocks, and these 6 things that we really want to prioritize, and we really want, like, the ultimate goal is to make them your foundation, to make them that cemented area that is always going to be there regardless of what happens to the rest of the house. It's always going to be there. So it's always going to be prioritized. It's always going to be the baseline of your lifestyle. When that is there, and that is the baseline of your lifestyle, when you're really prioritizing your sleep and managing your stress and choosing mostly nutrient dense foods and ensuring that you're getting lots of protein, and you're always trying to move your body and at least exercise for the most part, and you're really like bringing awareness to different pieces of your mindset from a psychological perspective, when, again, like, it sounds like a lot of work, but as you do it and as you get better at it and as it becomes more habitual and changes your identity, these are things that are always going to be there and will always be the driving factor of your overall health and wellness. And then when it comes time that, okay, maybe you did get too flexible with your nutrition and were eating a little bit more treats, and now you've gained a little bit more fat mass than you would like. Now you know that you still maintain all of those pieces, and we just have to refine them a little bit. Then there's other times in life where you're still maintaining those pieces, but you're a little bit more flexible with them because you like where you're at and you feel good, and it doesn't really matter, like, you're happy with your physique and how well you're performing and all of these pieces. But again, they're always there. And now, instead of going through this cycle of eating different ways and trying different things and just hoping for the best, now you know how you can drive your outcomes because you have the same foundation always. So to end this and to kind of wrap it up, I want everyone to understand that I have this kind of metaphor that I'm going to use. Everybody thinks that if we were driving in a car and our car is like our life, humans like to think that in order to achieve different results, we need to go car hopping. You want to lose fat? Okay, I need to get out of this car and I'm going to drive in that really fast car to get to where I'm going super, super fast. Okay, now I don't need this car and it's kind of like running down now because I've been driving it too fast and for too long. So now I need to go hop into this other car. I'm going to try this one. Oh, okay, now I've driven this one to the ground, so now I'm going to hop into the next one. And we do this through life. But the way that sustainable fat loss works is you think of your body as the one car that you get for your entire life. So you need to maintain it. And instead of trying to get into these other cars or treat your car like a car that it's not, we want to maintain it and we want to nourish it and we want to fix it and make sure that all the pieces are running together. So the big rocks are all of those running pieces that keep our car going and keep our car healthy enough to keep us going. And then so that's our maintenance. Like that's the maintenance of our car are the big rocks of sleep, stress management, nutrient dense foods, training, and mindset. That's what keeps our one car going at whatever speed that we want. And then sometimes we want a little bit more progress. We want more fat loss. We want to build some more muscle, whatever the more specific goal is. Now we can rev up the engine a little bit because we are in a maintained maintenance enough that our car can do that for a while. So we rev up the engine and then we get to the place we want to get to. And now it's like, okay, cool. Now we can kind of cruise for a little bit because my car is in healthy working order. So that's how I want you to think about your body going forward is like you are maintaining your one car for life. You can't hop it. You can't treat it like it's a muscle car or like it's a sports car for a prolonged period of time when you haven't been maintaining it properly enough for it to do those kinds of speeds. So that is what our body is like. And again, it's same thing as a car. When you are driving it too fast for too long without maintaining it, and then cruising it at all with no maintenance, in the same way that people are chronically dieting and getting off a diet and gaining weight and then dieting again and then gaining weight. It's stressful on whether it's your body or whether it's a car. That is stress that is going to run that car to the ground and ultimately be detrimental to its health. So think of your body as a car. Anyways, guys, I hope that all made sense because, again, I know that a lot of you are going to be looking into this season of life as spring comes up and as you feel more motivated and as you are looking towards the summer and wanting to feel your best. It's that time of year. So if any of you resonate with this or if this made sense to you or if there was things that hit home, please let me know. And also know, too, that my one-on-one coaching client roster is open right now. So there are going to be links in the show notes that can direct you to how to get started with that if you feel like we would be a good fit. So what would essentially happen is once I receive your application, I'll be in touch to schedule a call with you, and then we'll go through a more detailed intake together so that I can get a better idea of where you're starting from, what you've tried in the past, and where you're kind of hoping to end up. And we'll create a plan. I'll show you how my program works, and if we feel like we're a good fit, then you get signed on and we get started. It's a pretty simple process. You can also find pricing on my website. It's not anything that's hidden or anything that I'm just going to put in your face in the call and put you on the spot for. I'm pretty I'm pretty open about all of those pieces. I don't keep them hidden or anything like that. Anyways, guys, I have got to go, but please let me know if anyone has any questions. Please don't forget to subscribe or give us a 5-star review so that my podcast can be found by other people who could benefit from these things. But otherwise, that's it for now, and I'll see you guys next time.